If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. This is exactly how it works. With the C-19 outbreak, we heard all about contact tracing, that it was going to be in the best interest of everyone out there if we could trace and track people who might have come in contact with something that doesn't even exist, a disease that doesn't exist. And people said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. That way, I won't get sick. It's in my best interest, right? And how long does it take after it to suddenly see that they're going to be using contact tracing because people have opted in and allowed it to start tracking people's behavior? Now, obviously, all of these ridiculous riots that are going on around the country, they begin through funding. They begin through funding by people like George Soros, who's already been connected to Antifa. He's already been connected to Black Lives Matters. They're connected to it. They pay people to go there and protest, people on the front lines of the protest who do these things like blowing things up and setting fires to cars. This is all part of the show. What this does is it causes other people, it entices them to join in and be quote unquote proactive. Now they're using contact tracing to track the people who are showing up for these events. You know why? They want to see how their mind control is working on people. As all of this stuff is going down, there's people who can't even get haircuts in certain states, yet we're supposed to believe that everyone's running outside to join in on these protests, which, again, some people are a part of the monkey see, monkey do. They join in. Some people just go down there because they want to see what's going on, if it is happening in a city near them or a town near them. But this is them fishing. And listen for yourself and get a load, which just always, right? This is the Department of Public Safety in Minnesota. Get a load of the logo before you hear them even admit that they're using contact tracing. Wow, it is Minnesota, and look what's inside it. A pyramid and a pentagram, star. Boy, that's not a coincidence. I guess they just love pyramids and pentagrams / stars too. Are they big cowboy fans out there in Minnesota with the Vikings there? Are they just big fans of stars? Are we supposed to believe it's a star in outer space? Give me a break. They use signs and symbols right in front of our faces, just like this. It is such a joke. But listen to them talk about how they're going to use contact tracing now in Minnesota to find out who's coming from where, what groups they're affiliated with, what friends they have, so they can make people guilty by association.
As we've begun making arrests, we have begun analyzing the data of who we have arrested and begun actually doing what you would think is almost very similar to our COVID. It's contact tracing. Who are they associated with? What platforms are they advocating for? And we have seen things like white supremacist organizers who have posted things on platforms about coming to Minnesota. We are checking to see, do the folks that we have made arrests on and that we have information, are they connected to those platforms? We have seen flyers about protests where folks have talked about they're going to get their loot on tonight. And we're checking to see, are they part of an organized criminal organization? And if so, what is that organization and how are they organized? We have been working with both our state, our county, our local, and our federal partners to start looking at issues around, is this organized crime? Is this an organized cell of terror? Where do these folks, where is the linkage is what we're doing. And so we are in the process right now of building that information network, building that intel effort so that we can link these folks together, figure out what the organizations that have created this, and then just understand how do we go after them legally. That is absolutely part and parcel of our mission. We are, in fact, public safety, and we recognize that there are legal issues that are involved here. But we are not going to tolerate the violence and the destruction that they're using as a cover for the other illegal activity.
Oh, this sounds great. This is just what we need. And scary enough, these civilians who think that this stuff is, that they're not baiting people. That's the right word to use, because people think that I'm saying that, oh, it's not real, like they pulled stock footage out of a B movie somewhere. I get it. But you have to understand, they start this stuff. They pay and hire people. A lot of the guys doing this stuff are high-ranking Masons on the front, right? The police officers obviously connected. And then these other people they're literally getting paid to walk around, hold up signs. And this is to bait the public into joining, into letting them at least see it on TV so that they're scared. And then what happens, right? Martial law, which I'll talk about in another video, which obviously we're seeing at least 8 states calling for the National Guard to show up. Just what we need, right? All of this is happening at once. We just went from the C-19. I talked about this. If you've been listening to my channel, I said that these other things are going to pop back up. There's going to be shootings. There's going to be, the white versus black. They have to have these things for the civil unrest. And you know what? There's a good chance through the data tracking that they did that they wanted to impose the National Guard and martial law with the C-19, but they realized that people weren't buying into it as much. And they went back to this. There's a good chance of that. But look at this. Minnesota protests are starting to escalate, and demonstrations and marches have turned violent from everywhere from New York to LA. Curfews are being imposed in major cities around the U.S. at the time of this writing, and at least 8 states are calling for the National Guard and hoping to and wanting to impose martial law. In cities like Minnesota, officials are starting to turn to a familiar tool to investigate networks of protesters. So networks of protesters, right? In other words, if you're someone who gets baited into this and you go out there and do it, and again, they're going to use this even if they're not tracking, and even to say hypothetically one of these places, every single person who's there is somebody that's bought and paid for. They're still going to entice people to say, okay, you know what, this contact tracing thing is good, because they'll come out with stories of how they were able to stop a white militia group or white supremacist group from showing up in Minnesota because of the contact tracing, because they looked it up and found it ahead of time. They had this huge thing planned on the line that they were going to go and do this and fight against the Black Lives Matters movement or vice versa. And the police stepped in and stopped it from happening. And people are going to applaud and go, yeah, we need more restrictions like that. Just like the stuff we hear with taking away the Second Amendment, right? Oh, they found out beforehand through a post on Facebook, they stopped it from happening because the police were starting to use these tools like contact tracing to find who people are associated with, what they're saying online, where they're spending their time, where they're going, what stores they've been to, right? That's what all this is about. Zero privacy. But the people just see riots and stuff and they go, whatever they think's in our best interest, I'm going with it. We have to protect ourselves. This is getting out of hand. This is getting ridiculous. What's getting ridiculous is the amount of people in this country who don't give a damn about their privacy. And it's pretty clear that they don't at all when they're allowing them to contact trace them. It's unbelievable. Officials have been using what they're describing, without going into detail, as contact tracing in order to build out a picture of protester affiliations, a process that officials in the state say has led them to conclude that much of the protest activity is being fueled by people from outside coming in, despite what CNN says. I mean, they can't even get their data straight in half of this stuff. The governor said of Minnesota, Tim Walz, that as much as 80% of the protest and all this crap is coming from outside the state, where CNN, which you can't trust either, it's the same, what do they say, the same snake, different head. They're saying that 80% of the people are coming from outside of Minnesota and have been booked in jail on riot and other potentially riot-related charges over the past couple of days. So Minnesota, they're claiming the situation around the country is deteriorating. I'll get into that in another video. But just look at this stuff, imposing curfews. 16 states now imposing curfews. We just had curfews with the C-19. How many states had curfews of 8 o'clock in? Try ordering a pizza at 7 o'clock at night. You can't even get it delivered. That's what people have been telling me. Because the driver's got to be home and tucked in bed by 8 o'clock. It's like a scene out of these horror movies where there's killing sprees going on and they impose the curfews. And again, the other thing that's going to tie back into this is all of these people getting together and doing this. Now they have another way of tricking people into saying, oh, there's another spike in the number of outbreaks and cases because there's been pushback. And I know people go, well, every single thing that happens is part of their plan. I am one of those people. However, if you look at the data, they love data. They are obsessed with data. You don't think Gates and all these guys are obsessed with data? And they know if there's pushback that they have to do other things to get this to go through. They want this to go through. So they started releasing curfews and they go, okay, well, we have to ease up on curfews and restrictions because people are literally going and doing what they want. They're pissed off. They're going to the beach. They're not wearing masks. What are we going to do? Literally, they were calling to pull people out of the ocean. You know, the police officers. You don't think that if people see that, they're going to riot against the police and the government? Of course they are. So what an easy way to say, oh, the cases are back up, because people will go, oh, I knew it. All these people are crossing state lines when they're supposed to be in 14-day quarantines. Most of these states have 14-day quarantines in place if you cross the border and go into their state, which is unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. But they can easily now use this as another way to come out, tell everyone that there's a massive increase in cases in specific states, that we need to go back into quarantine, that we need to go back where we were, but we also need to impose martial law because of these types of riots and protests that aren't calming down, right? Instead of imposing the National Guard and quarantining people into, the civic centers in all these states, these arenas that they have, or the actual FEMA camps themselves. Now they can just use this and say, all right, well, the cases are up, so we have no choice. Americans are acting bad. They're being naughty, right? And that'll cause more division between whites and blacks, because white people will go, oh, it's the black people protesting. Oh, let's go after each other, not against the people who are actually doing this and pitting us against each other. And in the meantime, when we're re-quarantined, we're going to have to bring in a military state, which, Trump, they're all hinting at and talking about openly, bringing the National Guard to all these states. And then we could just be under full-time martial law. We don't have to worry about riots and protests. We're in our own prison cells that we made ourselves with the technology, and the rest is history. We've given up all our rights from the Patriot Act all the way down to allowing them to contact trace us, now being used pretty much to arrest people with guilt by association. That's pretty much what they're saying. Who are you affiliated with? Where have you been? Who are you around? Oh, and so-and-so is one of the people that burned the place, did this and rioted a store. Have you seen some of these videos? I saw a video, a guy just walked up to a Family Dollar and started smashing the windows and walked away. Huh? Oh, that seems real legit. That makes perfect sense. And I know there's idiots out there, but give me a break. Yeah, there's no security cameras around. What, are you going to go to jail for 20 years? And you're going to go, yeah, well, I'm in jail because I smashed a Family Dollar window. Why would you have all the things you could go to jail for, and it has nothing to do with the so-called protests? They're just sicking these people around doing these things and looting and rioting, right? This is how they can bring it in, and that's what they're going to do. I thank you for listening to today's show. Whew. Unbelievable the times we're living in. God bless all of you and your families.